I would like to welcome you all to our webinar, Practical Advice for the MSCA Postdoctoral Fellowships today. My name is Derya, and together with my colleague Jackson Howard, we are based in Washington, D.C., and we are the two coordinators, regional coordinators of EURAXESS North America, covering the US and Canada. I am also a researcher and adjunct professor at George Washington University. So the webinar will be recorded and available on EURAXESS North America website and YouTube channel. We strongly encourage you to visit EURAXESS website and follow our social media channels. We will be sharing the links with you during the event. Well, a little housekeeping before we get started and give the floor to our distinguished speakers. We welcome questions via Q&A answer box, but please feel free to share them there, not at the chat box. Our speakers will answer these questions after their individual presentations. And before I will hand over the floor to our speakers, I would like to invite Jackson Howard to present a brief information about EURAXESS North America and introduce our speakers. I hope you will enjoy the event. The floor is yours, Jackson.
I really appreciate it, Derya. I also am excited to have our speakers here. The large majority of our webinar today will be focused on them, and then many of you attending found it through us, so I will keep my introduction extremely brief. I'm going to quickly change some settings here. For the most part, you should be always following the speaker. And then let me share my screen. After I do that, I'll quickly ask a quick poll question or two to better understand what you're expecting from the MSCA. And then we'll dive right in. So thank you for your patience. I'll ask my colleagues to speak up if there's any technical issues with the presentation, but basically just in the course of a few minutes, I will explain that we are under this overarching project or initiative of the European Commission called EURAXESS Researchers in Motion. It's divided into a European side and a worldwide side. So we are one of the 9 worldwide hubs based in Washington, D.C. We are based in Washington, D.C., covering the US and Canada. There are 9 around the world outside of Europe. And then within each European country, there is a local EURAXESS presence, both an online national portal and then points of contact on the ground with expertise in particular regions of those countries and thematic areas and research fields. So to very quickly give you a call to action, I would say visit the EURAXESS website, whether you've heard of us or not. It's constantly being updated with new news and event posts, but then also updated with new functionalities. To really quickly give you a rundown of what the main strip, the horizontal strip at the very top of the website looks like, we have a jobs and funding portal. That's the bread and butter where academic and non-academic positions are posted. Anything receiving EU funds needs to be posted on that portal, but then also institutions and individuals are invited to create a free account and post their own opportunities there. So you can think of it as a one-stop shop. There's a partnering tool and hosting database. It's very similar in interface to the jobs and funding portal. This is where you can find researchers looking to hire, as well as host institutes looking to have you apply with a letter of support from them, so that when you successfully receive your MSCA-PF funding, you can then enroll and use them as a host institute. We have a very exciting 2-day session that was held on the 5th and 6th, so earlier this week, where dozens of European universities made sort of matchmaking session style pitch as to why you should choose them and the country. And once that recording is available, we'll be really happy to share that in a follow-up message. In the meantime, you can go on the EURAXESS website and find those host institutes that have expressed interest in having you apply with them. We also have career development tools, including webinars. Just like today, we'll give an overview and tips and tricks. We also have career development tools and events for all stages of your research career. So we encourage you to bookmark us and check those. And then, as I mentioned before, in addition to the 9 worldwide hubs and 43 national portals within Europe, these are throughout EURAXESS service centers. So check the information and assistance portal for your countries of interest. And again, bookmark us as EURAXESS North America. I mentioned before, there are 9 worldwide hubs. Here's a really quick listing of what they are. They are sometimes country specific, sometimes continent or region specific. So you can see there, we expanded last year with Africa as the newest one and cover most parts of the world. And if you are from a country that does not have a EURAXESS worldwide presence or coverage area, contact us here at EURAXESS North America. We'll be really happy to help you. So the EURAXESS website, you can visit the short URL at just euraxess.org. It'll forward you to the long official European Commission link. In the coming months, there will be continued development on what's called the Innovation Talent Platform. It's in the early stages right now, but basically the European Commission envisions EURAXESS as a major tool for researchers to support their career developments and mobility, regardless of which direction you want to go in. If you're in Europe looking to move to a different country in Europe, if you're outside of Europe looking to go there, or if you're based in Europe and you want to come to North America or other continents, there are mobility schemes for you. So again, in addition to the North America page, all of the EURAXESS portal is at your fingertips. I mentioned before that horizontal bar at the top. In past presentations, there was screenshots of what the website used to look like last year and early this year. There have been some major upgrades that are ongoing. So this is the new visual layout. If you haven't checked it out, just look at the red circle there. You go to euraxess.org, click jobs and funding, and you'll find all of those interactive portals that I mentioned there. So I also mentioned the 43 countries. These are the 27 EU member states, but then also at the current moment, 16 countries that pay into the budget for research and innovation, and therefore, in a simplified way, get treated like they are an EU member state, again, for purposes of research and researcher mobility. For Switzerland and the UK, they were previously associated to Horizon 2020, the previous 7-year framework program. They're currently in the negotiation stages to reassociate to Horizon Europe. However, with that said, they continue to have EURAXESS national portals and support staff, so you can contact those people for Swiss and UK specific questions. And I'm very happy to say that New Zealand and Canada are both countries not in the region of Europe, but that are in advanced stages of negotiating with the European Union the ability to associate. So we hope we have continued good news for researchers based in those two countries in the future. And this is a very quick overview of 18 categories most of these 43 portals go over, give expert advice on, and we'll take your questions on. I shared this very quickly, and there will be a PDF version of this presentation available afterwards, so you can dive in a bit deeper. If you're not already subscribed to the flash notes, you can click the worldwide portal on the EURAXESS homepage, North America, and with that big yellow button, subscribe to our twice monthly emails, and you can unsubscribe at any time. So what you hear from today is the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Action. This is one of the funding and mobility schemes in Pillar 1, the bottom up for individual researchers for the postdoctoral fellowships. We will also continue to heavily promote the European Research Council grants, or ERC grants, complementary scheme in Pillar 1, but then also these top-down international open calls and international research consortia from these 6 different clusters for the 7-year period that the EU has identified. So we encourage you to be in touch with us, including for a June 22nd info session that we'll be holding, and I will share a link in the chat briefly. So this email address will allow you to reach both Daria and me, and we also are pretty active on social media, so you'll be able to like and subscribe and follow and frequently see updated funding information. Some are highly specific, others are very general, so I would suggest liking and subscribing and then just constantly being in touch with us to see. So thank you for that. I will momentarily introduce our speakers. I want to quickly, before I do that though, launch into an audience poll just to better understand your needs and wants. So bear with me one second here. So I'll say, I'd like to first ask what best describes you. If you're a researcher interested in gathering information for yourself, if you are university staff, gathering information that you can then share with your community. And if you see both of these questions at the same time, if you have an idea on the time frame you might be interested in applying to the postdoctoral fellowships, the current call, which recently opened, maybe next year's call, if you know you want to really take some time to prepare your application, or if it's not in the immediate future for you, you can also select that if it does not apply to you because you're gathering this information on behalf of somebody else or a different community. So I'll leave this open just for a few seconds. I look forward, I will also share the results of this in the recording. I'll overlay it here. But other than just taking a few more seconds to allow a few people to respond, this will also help our speakers maybe slightly fine-tune their remarks to have a better idea. I know we did ask during the registration question if you could express your familiarity, and the large majority of respondents had said that they were somewhat familiar. A small number said very familiar, a small number said not very familiar, not familiar at all. So I think with that in mind, our speakers are aware that there's a moderate level of familiarity with the postdoctoral fellowships. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. I'm going to end the poll. I don't actually recall off the top of my head if the results are visible. So I will say that I will share these results. 88% are researchers interested for themselves. 13% are university staff. That's rounding up to the nearest whole percent. And half of the attendees are interested in applying to this current call. So I'll stop sharing that and take one moment to introduce our speakers. So thank you for answering those questions. So we have 2 great speakers from Ireland. They will be presenting some of the unique aspects of going to Ireland as a research destination. However, the information they're giving will be true to all of Europe, whether if you're interested in the European call, and if you're interested in the global call, leaving Europe and going elsewhere like the US, Canada, or anywhere else outside of Europe. We are at your service to provide information. So first we have Dr. Jane Kerrigan, national contact point for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions. She has over 20 years experience working in higher education in Ireland, firstly as an academic, program director and module coordinator for both undergraduate and postgraduate programs, and in more recent years, research administration. And after that, we have Dr. Yvonne Halpin, head of the Irish Marie Skłodowska-Curie Office. Dr. Halpin completed a PhD at Dublin City University, studying electrochemistry of materials for applications in molecular electronics and renewable energy, and has since worked in and out of academia, including at Science Foundation Ireland. And if you're interested in Ireland in particular, in Irish government funding for STEM, I will share a link to an interview we carried out with SFI in the chat. And after presenting, as my colleague Daria mentioned, the speakers will take questions. So please do share your questions in the Q&A box. We've enabled the chat so you can let us know if you have any technical issues or questions that aren't specific to MSCA, but other than that, our two great speakers will be looking at the Q&A box. So Dr. Halpin, Dr. Kerrigan, thank you both for being here, and please take it away.
Thank you very much, Jackson, and it's lovely to be here, and thank you again for the invitation. I'm going to try and share my screen. So just to let you know that the Irish Marie Skłodowska-Curie Office is supported by the Irish Research Council, and jointly operated with the Irish Universities Association. So our mission is really to support researchers in all disciplines across all sectors, and both applying to the MSCA program and in implementing MSCA projects. If you need to contact us, our contact details are here. Please follow us on Twitter. We have a YouTube channel also, and our previous webinars are also available on our YouTube channel, including a webinar that we have done recently on the postdoctoral fellowship call. So the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Office, Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions are part of the EU's Horizon Europe programme, which, as Jackson mentioned, and it's the key programme for the European Union, their key research and innovation programme. So it's an EU funding mechanism for what the Marie Curie Actions offer is an EU funding mechanism for excellent research and training activities. And they support the mobility of researchers between countries, sectors and disciplines to acquire new knowledge, skills and competencies. They're a key source of research funding for research in Ireland across all discipline, and they're the EU's flagship programme for doctoral education and postdoctoral training. They support researchers from all over the world with a particular focus on their training, skills and career development. Now, there are multiple calls within the Marie Curie Actions, so the purpose of our webinar today is the postdoctoral fellowship call, but I'm going to mention a couple of key features that apply to all. So Marie Curie Actions support excellent research in all domains. And it's a bottom-up approach, as Jackson mentioned, and by bottom-up I mean that it is it's not top-down. There's not a topic that researchers have to respond to. So researchers themselves decide the focus of the research problem that they want to address, and it's not predefined. And the MSCA is also about what can be called the 3 I's. So it's the international, intersectoral and interdisciplinary mobility, cooperation, mobility, and about stimulating that, if you like, cooperation. And another feature is the promotion of attractive working and employment conditions. So with the MSCA, participation of the non-academic sector is strongly encouraged. You can see from this slide that there's a large budget associated with the postdoctoral fellowship call, and there's 2 types of calls, the postdoctoral and the European fellowship call, and also the global fellowship call. And you can see that the deadline is the 13th of September for this year. So the objective of the call is to enhance the creative and innovative potential of researchers holding a PhD, wishing to acquire new skills through advanced training, international, interdisciplinary and intersectoral mobility. There are a number of features of this call. So I mentioned that there's 2 types, the European and global fellowship. It's also a mono-beneficiary call. So by this, I mean it's not a consortium type call. So one researcher applies, and they apply with one host organization that is based in the EU or an Horizon Europe associated country. And then the proposal itself is submitted to one of 8 scientific panels. You can see that there are panels for chemistry, for economic sciences, for information sciences and engineering, for environment and geosciences, for life sciences, mathematics, physics, and there's also a dedicated panel for social sciences and humanities, and that's the SOC panel. There's also a clear focus on developing skills beyond academia. So it's important to remember that there are 3 pillars in Horizon Europe, as Jackson mentioned at the start, and the MSCA is part of Pillar 1 in Horizon Europe, which is the excellent science. So postdoctoral fellowship is about having an excellent research project, but it's also more than that. The excellence element is also important in the researcher's training, supervision, and career development. So as I mentioned, there are 2 types of postdoctoral fellowship. The first is a European fellowship, where researchers of any nationality can apply for funding to undergo a fellowship of between 1 to 2 years in a host organization within a European member state or a country associated to Horizon Europe. And the second type is the global fellowship. This is open to nationals or long-term residents of European member states or countries associated to Horizon Europe. And the fellowship includes an outgoing phase of between 1 to 2 years in a third country. And a third country is a country that's not associated to Horizon Europe. So a fellow would spend 1 to 2 years in a third country before coming back for a 1-year return phase to the host organization within a European member state or a country associated to Horizon Europe. Applicants also have the option of including a non-academic placement in their proposal, which would allow for additional funding of up to 6 months at the end of their fellowship. So I want to talk a little bit about these secondments and placements. So within the postdoctoral fellowship, researchers can opt to undergo secondments and a placement to another organization. So secondments can be to any sector in any country worldwide, up to 1/3 of the fellowship duration, or with the global fellowship, 1/3 of the outgoing phase. And you can also opt to include a non-academic placement, and that's for up to 6 months with a non-academic European organization, but that takes place at the end of the fellowship. So it's important to say that proposals won't be penalised for not including a secondment or a placement period, but if you are including them, they will be evaluated, so they should align with the project's objectives and add significant value and impact. There's a lot on this slide. So this slide refers to eligibility criteria, but it's worth making sure that you are eligible to the call, especially from, I could see in the poll, as so many are thinking of applying for this year's call. So before you devote energy and a lot of time to developing a proposal, just spend a little bit of time checking out your eligibility, the eligibility criteria. So I'll start with the nationality. So as I mentioned, European fellowships are open to researchers of any nationality. But if you want to apply for a global fellowship, there are some qualifications. So it's only open to nationals or long-term residents of an EU member state or countries associated to Horizon Europe. There's also a mobility rule which applies to the researcher. So one of the key features of Marie Curie is that what we call those 3 I's, and mobility is one of them. So the mobility rule for the postdoctoral fellowship means that the researcher must not have resided or carried out their main activity in the country of the beneficiary for European fellowship, or a country of the host organization of the outgoing phase for a global fellowship. So they can't have worked or studied for more than 12 months in the 36 months before the call deadline. So I'm going to break that down a little bit. I always feel it sounds very complicated when I say it. But if you were applying for a European fellowship with the university in Ireland, you can't have worked or studied in Ireland for more than 12 months in the 36 months before the call deadline. Researchers also must be in possession of a PhD by the call deadline. So if you have graduated with a PhD, that's perfect, that's great. But even if you haven't, you could still be eligible, as you don't necessarily have to have graduated, but you must have successfully defended your PhD thesis, and it must be an unconditional pass with no further corrections or amendments required. So important to say here too that no supporting documentation in relation to this is submitted with the actual proposal itself, but supporting documentation may be requested at a later stage by the European Research Executive Agency, and it may indeed be requested by a host organisation. So researchers also should not have more than 8 years research experience post-PhD. And this is not necessarily in calendar years, but it's the cumulative time spent conducting research since their PhD. So the exceptions can apply. So you could still be eligible if you're more than 8 years post-PhD, because exceptions apply for, say, career breaks or sick leave or maternity leave or time spent working in non-research roles. So anyone who's thinking of applying, you can consult the Commission's assessment tools. So we've included it in the slide here. And this will help you determine if you meet this eligibility criteria. And there's also a resubmission restriction. So researchers who receive a score of 70%, of less than 70% in the previous postdoctoral fellowship call cannot submit the same proposal with the same host in the following year's call. I'm going to go through some eligibility examples here, just to make it very clear. So in this first example, we have an Irish researcher who's awarded a PhD in 2019, so 4 years ago, in the US, and he remains resident there in the US. They're applying for a European fellowship in the field of nanotechnology together with a host institution in Ireland. So are they eligible? So let's break it down. Well, they've been awarded their PhD before the call deadline. So they have a PhD. They're less than 8 years research experience since the award of PhD. So it was awarded in 2019. They haven't lived in Ireland for more than 12 months in the previous 3 years. So we can say they are eligible. Just going to go through another example. We have a Canadian researcher living in Ireland for the previous 3 years with a PhD in 2022. And they're applying for a global fellowship in the field of psychology with a host in France and outgoing phase in Japan. So they're awarded their PhD before the call deadline. They're less than 8 years research experience, so they're just a year finished their PhD. They're not more than 12 months in Japan in the previous 3 years. But remember, there is a caveat regarding nationality for the global fellowship. So you have to either be a national of a European member state or associated country, or a long-term resident in a European country or a European member state or associated country. So in this case, we'd have to go back to the researcher and ask a couple of more questions. Are they a long-term resident? And the definition of a long-term resident is defined in the work programme and also in the guide for applicants. So it means period of legal and continuous residence within an EU member state or associated country of at least 5 consecutive years, and absences of less than 6 consecutive months and no more than 10 months over the whole period are permitted when calculating the 5 years. So we'd have to ask a few more questions to see if this particular researcher was eligible. I mentioned one of the key features of the Marie Curie is that it promotes attractive working conditions, and that's reflected in the funding model. So it follows a prescriptive budget model where the budget is based on unit costs, and the budget table is included in the work programme, and it has additional explanations of each category. But in short, there are 2 categories. So the first includes the contributions of the researcher. So you can see here from this slide that the researchers will receive a living allowance and a mobility allowance, and the amounts here are per month. They'll also possibly be eligible for a family allowance depending on their circumstances. But the second category is the institutional costs. So your host organisation will receive funds for research and training and network contributions and management and indirect contributions. Now, these allowances here are gross amounts, so they're subject to employer and employee statutory deductions. Some of you are, because these amounts are published in the work programme, so they're available to all. You can clearly see what researchers will receive in terms of their funding, so in their living allowance and mobility allowance. But some of you are probably thinking, but aren't there differences in cost of living? So we know that the cost of living in Ireland, it could be very different for our European neighbours in Poland, in Spain, and again in Sweden. And the EU has tried to address this. So a country correction coefficient applies to the living allowance in order to ensure equal treatment and purchasing power parity really for all researchers. So for Ireland, you can see it's 119.5%. I'm just going to explain that a little bit. So the living allowance is like the salary a researcher will get. And you can see here it's listed as 5,080 euros per month. But the country coefficient is 119.5%. So you multiply that in amount by 119.5%, and that's the gross amount the person will receive. Bear in mind, though, it's gross amount, so it will be subject to tax. So you can see it's very competitive, certainly nationally. So I'm going to go on a little bit and talk about how to apply and the evaluation. And I'll start, just give you a little outline here of the when the call opened. So it opened on the 12th of April and it's going to close on the 13th of September 2023. It's 5 p.m, but that's 5 p.m. Brussels time. So just keep that in mind too. We're often asked questions about when can you start a project. So if you are selected for funding, is there flexibility on the dates? And we just have a general rule for the postdoctoral fellowships, usually about 2 years after the call deadline. It's the start of that month. So it's the 1st September 2025. So there is flexibility when you can start. But I always say this is a lovely problem, lovely challenge to have when you get to that stage. So there's lots of resources to help with writing a proposal, and most queries can be answered by checking the call documents. So interested applicants are advised to check the work programme and make sure you're reading the most up-to-date version, and that can be found in the EU Funding and Tenders proposal, as well as other really helpful documents, the guide for applicants that I've mentioned already, and the proposal template. And the EU Funding and Tenders portal also includes an FAQ section, which is frequently updated with the most frequent questions the Commission receives, and that can be really helpful to check during the weeks and months ahead as you're preparing your proposal. Just a note on the work programme, it's a really super useful document, but it's not necessarily very user-friendly. So don't print it all out, because not all of it is relevant to you. There's a number of calls in Marie Curie Actions, and postdoctoral fellowship is just one. So this is quite a large document, but only 2 parts refer to the postdoctoral fellowship call. Now, they're in 2 different sections, so I've highlighted here in this slide where they are. So the first part goes through the conditions of the call. That's the deadline and what the objective of the call is. And this is important because it's important that your proposal aligns with the objectives of the call and you understand what the purpose of the call is. So it's worthwhile reading this part and understanding what the objective of the call is. And I think you'll see from reading it that it's more than just having an excellent research project. The second section I've highlighted here is important too, because this is the part that goes to important features such as the amount of funding available, admissibility, eligibility, and also award criteria. And the award criteria is particularly useful to have to hand when writing the application in order to keep your focus. There's some other useful documents I thought I'd mention here and guidance too. So the PF handbook for applicants is produced as part of a European project involving our national contact points from across Europe. It's really important to have a document. It's a really important document to have to hand, because one of its features is it has sections on the strengths and weaknesses that evaluators have written in the evaluation summary reports. And that's super, super helpful to have to hand when you're writing different sections of the proposal. Some of the documents on this slide you will see featured in the proposal templates too, such as the MSc guidelines for supervision and also the MSCA Green Charter. So the MSCA Green Charter is a code for good practice for individuals and institutions who are in receipt of MSCA funding, and it promotes sustainable implementation of research activities. And just to note, in the 2023 call, there is now a section in the B2 part of the application which asks applicants to address the environmental considerations in light of this MSCA Green Charter. And finally, I'm just including a link to the portal here, and I'd really recommend that you save it to your favorites for easy access to it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual submission process here. So the postdoctoral fellowship is a single stage application process, and the application is submitted through the European Commission's Funding and Tenders Opportunity Portal. So once you navigate to the call page on the portal, you can start to create an application. And when you do that, you'll need your host participant identification code. So it's otherwise called a PIC. And your host can provide assistance there if you need it. It's a good idea to check with your host organization that you have the correct PIC number. You can search for it on the portal, but it's useful to check. And the application is composed of two parts, Part A and Part B. You fill in Part A on the portal itself, and then Part B has two parts, B1 and B2, and both B1 and B2 are uploaded onto the portal in two separate PDF files. So once you've completed Part A and you've uploaded B1 and B2, you can then submit the application. Some good news here, with the EU Funding and Tenders portal, you can submit the proposal at any time, once it's before the call deadline. And once you have submitted it and before the deadline, you can then reopen it, edit, resubmit your proposal as many times as required, and only the last submitted version will be evaluated. So give yourself plenty of time to submit in advance of the deadline. And one tip I would say here is to try and get to grips with the portal as soon as you can, particularly if you haven't used it before. It's a little bit intimidating at the start, but I am testament to the fact that I haven't managed to break it yet. So if you haven't given it a go, do try and log on to it and work your way around it. It's manageable when you have time to process it, but if you're the day before the deadline, it can be very stressful to try and figure it out then. So use this time now to start your proposal on the portal. I'm going to talk a little bit about more about Part A and Part B here. So the application itself is composed of two parts. So in Part A, all general information, Part A is just about the general information, if you like, so in relation to the proposal. So that's things like the acronym, the title, the panel you're applying for, the keywords that you'd use to describe your proposal, the abstract. Then it'll ask for information as well about the participants, so information about the researcher, the name of the researcher, the supervisor, and the host organization. You'll be required to answer specific questions related to the duration of the fellowship and consequently the budget, ethics question, and some fields regarding eligibility requirements. There's very good guidance in the guide for applicants on Part A, and particularly when it comes to how you can add an associate partner. For example, if you are choosing to include a non-academic placement, or if you're applying for a global fellowship and you have an outgoing host, they will be an associate partner. So there's good guidance in the guide for applicants. And Part B consists of two parts. So there's a narrative part and B1 and B2, and they're uploaded, as mentioned, as separate PDF documents. And the templates for B1 and B2 are available on the Funding and Tenders portal. Now, B1 is really the core of the proposal. And there's a challenge here because it's a maximum of 10 pages, and there's a lot to cover in those 10 pages. Any additional pages will be disregarded by experts. So the questions are on B1 are based around excellence, impact, and implementation criteria. B2 contains the applicant researcher's CV. So the indicative size is 5 pages. It also asks for information on the host organization. There's some ethics and security questions, the environmental considerations relating to the MSCA Green Charter that I mentioned. And if you're applying for a global fellowship only, you need a letter of commitment from the outgoing host. Now, the postdoctoral fellowship proposal will be evaluated by experts on the basis of the award criteria of excellence, impact, and implementation. And you need to address each part in the proposal. So under excellence, reviewers will evaluate the quality and pertinence of the research and innovation objectives and the extent to which they are ambitious and go beyond the state of the art. So this has to be an excellent research project. And reviewers will also evaluate the methodology, so how you're going to do the research, and included in this section, the gender and diversity dimension of the research, as well as open science. And then excellence will also include the quality of the supervision and the training and transfer of knowledge that will take place, as well as the quality of the researcher's professional experience and skills. The proposal then will also be evaluated under impact, and impact will include the potential impact on the researcher's career perspectives and employability, the impact from the proposed dissemination, exploitation and communication activities, and the project's potential to deliver a scientific and where relevant economic and societal impact. And finally, then the quality and efficiency of the implementation is evaluated through the work plan, assessing the risks and efforts assigned to work packages and the quality and capacity of the institution, including hosting arrangements. So each criterion has a different weighting, and excellence accounts for 50% of the final score. Impact accounts for 30% and implementation is 20%. Remember, it's all within 10 pages. So it's safe to say that applicants need to score really highly in the excellence section in order to be in with a chance for being funded. Now, you do need to do well in all sections, but particularly you need to score highly in the excellence section. I'll talk a little bit now about the evaluation process, but specific attention should really be given to the choice of descriptors, these keywords. And these are important because they'll ensure the most appropriate experts for the proposal evaluation. And this is done when you're completing part A on the portal. So the evaluation procedure takes approximately 5 months. So when an application is received, the EU's research executive staff will perform an eligibility check, and there will be a pre-allocation of proposals to experts using the keywords and descriptors that you have selected and you have provided. This is important because this could be something that you might be tempted to leave to the last minute, but really think carefully about the keywords that you're selecting. This is your chance to influence the type of expert that you will get to read your project. And of course, you want someone who maybe understands your proposal or will appreciate it to be one of the reviewers. So there will be at least 3 experts per proposal, and each expert will prepare an individual evaluation report, and they work independently and they complete the report that's assigned to them. And then they detail the comments, but no scores at this stage. But then there's a consensus report and that's created, and it reflects all the comments from those reviewers, and all the reviewers that have been assigned to the particular proposal get to see all the comments, and they discuss and agree on those comments, and then they score the proposal. There's a panel review phase then where the proposals are ranked and funding allocated, and it's allocated by scientific panels. So if you remember, there's 8 scientific panels. Just to say, there's a separate ranking for European Fellowship and Global Fellowship, so there'll be at least 16 panels, and there may also be an additional ethics process for proposals that are in the that are on the main and reserve list before the final ranked list is created and the results released. And at that stage, successful applicants will be invited to begin the grant agreement process. So 5 months, you can see why it takes 5 months in total, and results then will be expected around January. So I'm going to finish there. I'm going to stop sharing, and I will hand over to my colleague Yvonne, who will give some tips on writing the proposal. Over to you, Yvonne.
Thanks, Jane. So I will just share. Okay, super. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, I think, or good morning, depending on where you are. It's just evening here for us. So I have a few more slides to go through, and I just want to spend a little bit of time on giving some kind of practical tips on writing a proposal, some advice about how you can go about finding a host organization. And while the call here is applicable to potential host organizations across Europe, I will just focus in a little bit on Ireland and the higher education and research landscape in Ireland. So starting off with just some practical tips on writing a proposal. So Jane referred to this earlier on, and I think if there's one thing you take away from today, it's that the MSCA postdoctoral fellowships, they are not a kind of standard research project. So the fellowship is so much more than simply a research project in itself. And as Jane referred to the work program earlier, if you do go and look at the work program and the desired outcomes and impacts from a kind of policy perspective, it's very much about broader issues like your training, your career development, communication of your research, that kind of thing as well. So just some kind of tips here when you're approaching the proposal and designing your fellowship. Really think about it as an opportunity to kind of gain new knowledge for yourself. And that's by really driving your own research project and working on your own research project. It's really important that you find the right host and the right supervisor as well, because they're important elements in this thing as well. And the supervisor particularly will help guide you with the proposal. The fellowship, it's also an opportunity to learn new skills. So as I said, from a kind of policy perspective and a desired impact, these fellowships are supposed to enhance your skills development and your career prospects, both kind of short-term and long-term after the fellowship. Also, they're an opportunity to grow your networks. So whatever kind of desired career you have, be that inside academia or outside academia, the fellowships are really an opportunity to expand your networks across borders, disciplines, and across sectors as well. And also they're an opportunity to spread information about your research. So be that in terms of disseminating your project and the results to expert audiences, or exploiting your research for future use. And indeed, and importantly from the European Commission's perspective, the fellowships are also an opportunity for you to engage with non-expert audiences and to talk to members of the general public about your research and the importance of research and investing in research in general and how that benefits society. And then also they're a really good opportunity to engage in mobility. And so that's international mobility across borders, but also mobility across sectors and disciplines. And they're a great opportunity to transfer knowledge, both be it from you to your host organizations, or indeed the other way around as well. So it's this kind of two-way not transfer, or three-way if you're opting for a global fellowship. And then when you approach the proposal writing process, some practical tips here. There is a bit of an art to writing the postdoctoral fellowships proposal, and you really need to start early. Engage early in the process and work on it well ahead of time. The deadline for this year's call is in the middle of September. It might seem like it's a while away, but I really encourage you to be working on this now and engaging with your host organizations. Jane mentioned there are 10 pages, the part B1 of the proposal, which is the kind of core of the fellowship description. So you really need to be succinct, get straight to the point, and think about how you could use maybe figures or schematics to help illustrate the points you're trying to make. Also, it's important for you yourself to really understand and to be able to articulate why your proposed research project is important. And also along those lines, think about why the EU should fund this. And you could also go one step further and think about, are there particular EU policy priorities or strategies that your research may be able to contribute to or may be relevant to? And it's no harm to mention those if they are. It won't be applicable for every type of research, but if they are. Early and frequent engagement with the supervisor and the host organization is really important for a competitive proposal. And I think in our experience, the proposals that end up being funded are ones where there really is a good collaborative effort between those three elements of the team needed, if you like, to write the proposal. Also, there are certain sections of Part B1 and Part B2 where you need information from the supervisor and the host organization. So early engagement is really important there. Jane went through the evaluation criteria. So that criteria maps directly onto the proposal template, and the expert evaluators use those criteria as well to mark your proposal. So really address every single subpoint within the proposal template. Don't leave anything out. Also, the proposal templates may change year on year. There may be subtle changes to the rules year on year. So it's really important that you use the 2023 version of the proposal template, and that's available from the Funding and Tenders portal as well. And then as you're writing this and as you're going through different drafts, what we find is useful and good advice is to have other people read your proposal, and not just people within your immediate disciplinary area. Think about asking colleagues or friends or family members who are outside of your area and possibly not even within research to read it and see if they can follow it, because while there'll be expert evaluators assigned to your proposal, they won't necessarily be experts within your particular niche. So it's really important that your proposal is accessible and understandable to those immediately outside of your area. So then it comes to how you would go about, if you're interested in applying, how do you find a host organization to apply with? And for the MSCA postdoctoral fellowships, so the host organizations which would directly receive the funding from the EU, they can be any legal entity from within a European member state or a country associated to Horizon Europe. And the really great thing about the MSCA and including the postdoctoral fellowships is that they are open to organizations from across sectors. So it's not just for academic organizations. So on the slide here, we've popped up the definitions of academic organizations and non-academic organizations. But you could apply with a company, you could apply with a university, it could be a charity, an SME, for example, as long as it's a legal entity in a member state or a country associated to Horizon Europe. And going one step further, then just different ways you can think about finding that host organization. So what we found is the first thing to do is to activate your own professional networks and existing collaborations. We found that can often be the most effective way to get that match between a supervisor and a researcher, and indeed the host organization as well. So think about your own networks, maybe your colleagues' networks, that kind of thing, and start to explore those. Also check key publications in your area. Who are the experts who you'd like to work with? What kind of labs, which organizations have significant expertise in the research area that you want to go in, and you may be able to approach people that way. Of course, and Jackson touched on this earlier, the EURAXESS jobs portal is a useful way because organizations in Europe will often put up posts saying that they want to host researchers to apply to the postdoctoral fellowships call. So you should search there. And then also just to plug that the MSCA Net project or consortium has its own bespoke matchmaking online platform, and that's called the MSCA Net B2 Match platform. So the link is there to that as well, and you can register on that and seek to find a match that way. And then just honing in on Ireland for a moment, there are some databases in Ireland online that you can go to search for researchers within the academic setting around particular areas of expertise. And we've got the links to these here. So as I said, the postdoctoral fellowship open to any organizations across Europe to apply with, but we wanted to just take the opportunity to showcase the Irish research and higher education landscape just for a few slides, because it may be an option for you and it may be a good host country for you for the postdoctoral fellowships. So the Irish higher education system, it really has an excellent reputation worldwide, really excellent universities, and the Irish universities are ranking in the top 1% research institutions in the world. And the landscape in Ireland, it's made up of universities, technological universities, institutes of technology, and some colleges as well. But essentially, it's a strong ecosystem of really world-class organizations, including industry-facing research centres and technology centres as well. As for the latest data, there's about approximately 10,000 PhD students in Ireland, so really active. And the universities and the technological universities have representative bodies as well, which advocate for the needs of the sector. And being a small Ireland, Ireland has the advantage of being a really highly networked nation with a really quite developed and strong system of research supports or research funding supports, and that's both to support academic research and also academic to non-academic collaboration, which as well is a policy objective of the MSCA postdoctoral fellowships. So the supports available cater for kind of discovery-based research through to mission-oriented research, right through to applied research and innovation. And it's across all disciplines and for all career stages as well. And also these include enterprise development agencies, which deliver programs and provide assistance to the enterprise sector, but also they're responsible for driving kind of research commercialization as well. And Ireland has developed a really world-class research and innovation system too. And it's developing and has developed a great reputation for research across the disciplines, so including arts, humanities and social sciences and the STEM disciplines as well. Ireland is currently ranked 6th on the European Innovation Scorecard for 2022, and it's ranked 23rd out of 132 countries in the 2022 Global Innovation Index. Ireland also ranks 1st in the world for knowledge diffusion, 5th for knowledge absorption, and 10th for knowledge impact. And it's positioned 14th in the global scientific ranking as well. And so it's since the start of the 21st century, the research and innovation system in Ireland has really been transformed, and government investment has grown through the years, as has private sector investment in research as well. So it's a really thriving system here in Ireland. Just a quick note, last year, the Irish government launched its current strategy for research and innovation, that's Impact 2030. But really just wanted to point out that, you know, through this strategy, you can see that supporting research and innovation and supporting talent and attracting talent to Ireland is a government priority. And outlined in Impact 2030 is really an Ireland that where research talent is supported at all career stages. It's nurtured, it's developed, and it's really to build on Ireland's reputation as an island of talent and a location for research excellence and impact. And Ireland's global outlook will be enhanced through really strong European and global research innovation collaborations. And that's, for example, through programs like the MSCA and Horizon Europe as well. And the strategy aims to see that research and innovation makes a real and positive impact across the society, the economy, and the environment in Ireland. And also it's aiming for an Ireland where research excellence is enabled by a world-class accessible environment, and where investment in research continues to grow, and that's also by supporting kind of enterprise driven innovation as well. And then just a few points here, just to say, I guess some of the reasons why you should consider Ireland. It's a small nation, but it's a really highly networked nation, and it's a highly coordinated nation. So it really makes it a good place to undergo your research project, not just in academia, but across sectors as well. And Ireland is aiming to be a global leader in nurturing, developing, and retaining talent to drive research and innovation. And currently Ireland is ranking 3rd globally for attracting and retaining international talent. It's currently categorized as a strong innovator, and also Ireland is a member of several key international research organizations. And as per the United Nations Human Development Index, Ireland ranks 2nd in the world for quality of life. And Ireland has been very successful, particularly in the MSCA, across the previous framework programme, Horizon 2020, and currently. And in Horizon 2020, Ireland ranked 2nd in Europe in terms of drawdown per capita under the MSCA. And just to kind of reinforce Ireland's performance in the MSCA, honing in on the postdoctoral fellowships. So in Horizon 2020, about €50 million was secured by Irish organisations. That's about 253 fellowships. And in the first call under Horizon Europe for the postdoctoral fellowships, Ireland was on par with the call success rate, but that has increased greatly in the 2022 call, which was the most recent one, with a success rate of about 20%. Quick note on EURAXESS Ireland. So this is based within the Irish Universities Association as well. And in addition to the kind of more typical EURAXESS supports, and Jackson went through some of those, we just wanted to mention that EURAXESS Ireland also operates a free fast-track immigration hosting agreement scheme. And that allows for the employment of non-European Economic Area MSCA fellows to come into Irish academia and industry. And some of the pros, I guess, of that scheme is that there's no need to apply for additional work permit, there's quicker visa processing times, and also spouses and children can join with the researcher, provided the researcher's salary is over a €30,000 threshold, and the spouse can work in Ireland as well. And also EURAXESS Ireland offers free professional immigration advice, so you can get in touch with them if you have any questions about any of this stuff. And that's my colleague, Magda, who is the person to talk to in EURAXESS Ireland. Last slide for me, just to say that there are NCP supports as well for applicants who are applying with host organisations based in Ireland. We support applicants across all disciplines and across all sectors. A number of supports like webinars and information sessions, and they're all recorded and available on our YouTube channel. We're also part of the consortium which produces the proposal writing handbooks, and the handbook for this year's call is due kind of mid-June. Hopefully we're expecting to see that. We also offer proposal writing workshops for applicants, and we offer a proposal pre-review service, which is coordinated through host organizations in Ireland. So we have plenty of resources. They're available at this link. And I think that's me for the slides. So I'll stop sharing. Super.
Well, thank you both very much. What I'd like to do is, I think you are very capable and able to see any Q&A items that are submitted by the audience. As I pop in right now, I actually don't see any. I think that speaks to the depth of information you provided. I will quickly open here. Just let me pull up my text. We did open up the registration form to questions as well that could be submitted in advance. So while I want to encourage everyone to take a few minutes here to think about your questions, submit them, so our speakers can address you live. You can also email us at EURAXESS North America or in your Europe-based national contact points afterwards. That said, I want to go to two questions that were submitted during registration. One was more of a general comment just from someone in the US expressing interest in learning about Americans or people based in the US who secured the fellowships to go to Europe. So one suggestion I'd like to do, and I'll share a link in the title in the chat in just a moment, is to check out the Marie Curie Alumni Association. So they have regional chapters, sometimes country specific, sometimes continent or region specific throughout the world. And the North America chapter covering Canada and the US provides information and networking services to current fellows and alumni alike, but they also promote the fellowships in general. So they're a great contact that you can complement with EURAXESS North America and your Europe NCPs for MSCA to learn more, and including finding current fellows and alumni to hear about their success stories. So I'll share a link to the website that describes them. They're most active on social media, so that can be a great way also to just follow them throughout their daily and weekly posts. And then another question that maybe I'll invite our speakers to open with is just generally asking about changes from the calls year to year. Are there any novelties in the 2023 open call that applicants should be aware of? Thank you very much. From here, I'll let you drive.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson. So yeah, sometimes, I mean, going from Horizon 2020 to Horizon Europe, there were more significant changes, but sometimes there can be quite subtle changes going year on year, which is why it's really important to take the most recent template. And it's even more important for people who may be resubmitting to the call. We find in our experience that sometimes people can kind of fall foul to resubmitting a proposal by not using the new template, only looking at the weaknesses from their previous evaluation report, and the new proposal then becomes somewhat disjointed, and then sometimes it can be marked even lower, which is not what you want. So particularly if you're a resubmission, we advise to treat it like a new proposal, take the new template and take each section, and obviously bring in what's still relevant from your last one. But just honing in on the differences between the 2022 call and the 2023 call. So there have been some which are perhaps more significant and some which are quite subtle. But just to run quickly through them. So there is within the excellence section 1.2 is methodology, and there's quite a lot in methodology. Things like the actual methodology itself of your research, and then that goes further into things like interdisciplinarity, gender and diversity, open science, and research data management. But this year, they've actually added a section on artificial intelligence. So the European Union puts a lot of focus on making sure that any researchers who are using artificial intelligence kind of techniques or tools or systems, or if they're going to develop artificial intelligence-based systems within their research, they need to address in the proposal that there's due diligence, that the risks are minimized, and there's quite a bit to it, but that's a new section within methodology, so you definitely want to keep that in mind. There have been some subtle changes to wording in the impact section in 2 out of the 3 sections, so it really encourage people to look closely at the new template. One of the bigger changes in impact is under section 2.3 in impact, which asks applicants to articulate whether their research will have scientific, economic, or societal impact. And in the first couple of years in Horizon Europe, applicants were trying to argue that their research was having all 3 types of impact, and understandably so, based on how it was in the proposal template. But we've had kind of clarity from the European Commission, and also there's a changing in the wording now that the Commission still wants applicants to consider all 3 types of impact, but they want them to be realistic as well. So your proposal may not have or your research may not have all three types of impact down the line. So if it only has maybe scientific and societal, that's okay, as long as you can clearly articulate that and justify that as well. Some changes in font size and formats for tables, so really pay attention there. That can really punish people, especially on a resubmission. And also there's been a change, and Jane mentioned it previously. If you wanted to include a non-academic placement, you had to have a letter of commitment from that host, but you don't need that anymore. So quite a few, some subtle, some not so subtle, but really do pay attention to the new template.
Yeah, and just to add, there in the new proposal template, there's a history of changes in the first part of it. Yeah. So if you need to do a final check, particularly if you're resubmitting, it goes through some of them. And the new proposal templates that you can download from the portal have little tags on each section, and that look very strange, like exclamation marks, but they're a tagging system that the Commission is using in Horizon Europe, so don't delete them. And we just mention it because 10 pages, it's quite a temptation maybe to delete what you can, but we're being asked to advise people not to delete those. So thanks, Yvonne. I think there's a question in, Yvonne, about can we apply for a global fellowship while we are already working for a global partner? So a global fellowship, we mentioned the budget actually, and most of the applications that the Commission receive are for the European fellowship. So global fellowships gets 15% of the budget. But I suppose I'd start by saying keep to the eligibility criteria. And think of it like that. So that's what you're going to be judged on. So do you have a PhD? Are you meeting the mobility requirement? So and think about who your host organization is as well in relation to that. I'm not sure if the question is thinking, is it the same organization? Is that what you were thinking?
That's the way I read it, Jane. So if I was to take an example, let's say there's a researcher in Harvard and they want to apply for a global fellowship, and I'll take Trinity College Dublin as the European host, but Harvard as the global host. If the researcher is already in Harvard, and if they've been in Harvard for more than 12 months in the previous 3 years before the deadline, then they wouldn't satisfy that eligibility rule. So I think it's the eligibility rule is based on the country of the global host, not necessarily the organization for the global host. So I think if you've been based in the United States for more than 12 months in the previous 3 years, you wouldn't be able to apply with a global host in the United States. Just to keep that in mind. That's for global fellowships.
Great.
And our researcher may have followed up with the question about if they've been there less than 12 months in this example. It looks like in that case, they would be eligible.
Yeah.
Yes, if it's less than 12 months by the time of the call deadline in mid-September, then they would be eligible. Yeah.
And I suppose
just to underscore the call deadline, because in this case, we have several months until September.
That's it. And it's that date is the 13th of September becomes very important. Yes.
So to that asker, I'll encourage you to reach out by email to EURAXESS North America if you want us to put you in touch with Europe-based NCPs who can provide an authoritative answer if you want to give very specific information on dates and numbers. But I think as a general rule, thank you both for that expert answer. And I'll do everything I can to buy us a minute or two, because I really do want people to take advantage of having you virtually in front of us in live. But I do think that the presentations have been really comprehensive, a lot of links. So what I'll do is, I've already mentioned this in the chat, but I will commit to within a few days. Sometimes we can be very quick, but I'll give myself a few working days to get the presentation uploaded in PDF format with clickable links on the website, and then edit the video recording so we have a nice final version that we can put on YouTube and embed on the event post. So right before I end the webinar, I will be including a link to the event page, which is how you registered in the first place if you're attending this. You can bookmark it, continue to check back over the next few days. But I will, alongside my three great colleagues, keep seeing if questions come in, but if not, we will let you
maybe I can say we tend to get a lot of queries about eligibility. So I suppose it's to think, I suppose consider eligibility at this stage is kind of useful. And I thought I might just add, if people are still thinking of questions, myself and Yvonne see a lot of proposal drafts because of the pre-review service we offer in Ireland. And I would say one of the common mistakes we see is people spending too long on that excellence section. So you have 3 sections in the proposal within 10 pages. And the excellence section can be a very exciting part because it's the science part at the start and how you go beyond the state of the art. But really, we would say, although it's 50% of the marks on the excellence section, so it's going to be around 5, maybe 6 pages, but more than that, and you risk losing marks in the other 2 sections. So it's very hard to get it within 10 pages on a first draft or even a second draft, but to keep those, I suppose, page limits in mind when you're finalizing your proposal.
I think with that, a lot of great information has been shared. I have just added a few items, events and URLs to the chat. With that, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I may ask our colleagues to share any final thoughts, and then I'll have my counterpart here and my colleague close it out. So
I think we don't have any more comments. So thank you for all of you for joining us, for your time. And we are looking forward to meeting in our events, because we organize a lot of events about not only MSCA, also about ERC and other funding opportunities, especially for Pillar 2. So we would like to see you all again, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.